In today's video, we dive into the heartbreaking story of Kendra Hatcher, a young woman whose life was cut short in a shocking crime fueled by lust, love, and lies. The day Brenda Delgado got an email from her ex-boyfriend was a warm one in the summer. For many years, they were together and happy. Ricky even gave her a promise ring. According to the police, Ricky ended things in February of that year because he was no longer happy. They stayed friends, and in June, Ricky emailed Brenda to tell her he was dating someone else, a beautiful young woman named Kendra Hatcher. Before we continue, I want to know, where are you watching from today? Whether you're in the US, across the globe, or somewhere in between, drop it in the comments below. It's always great to see how far these stories travel. And if you're finding this case as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Now, let's dive back into the story. One trouble was that Brenda hadn't moved on with her life, like Ricky had so happily. Police say Brenda swore she would do whatever it took to get Ricky back after hearing this terrible news. Anything or anyone that stood in her way, she was ready to kill. From September 2014 to September 2015, Kendra's life was pretty much perfect. Pleasant Plains, Illinois was where she grew up and became a dentist. Then she went to Dallas, Texas to start over. Most dentists would jump at the chance to start their own business after all those years of schooling. Kendra, on the other hand, made decisions that showed a lot about who she was as a person. As an alternative to going out on her own, she joined a group called Smile Zone, where she could give kids from less fortunate homes good dental care. She was sure she could make a difference in her neighborhood here. Kendra spent a lot of her free time telling people about the Bible, even when she wasn't helping poor people. She had even joined a program whose goal was to build churches in other countries. This was already great, but the group went even further by giving free dental care to kids in Ecuador. Kendra was definitely a very kind person who always thought about what was best for other people. In May of that year, though, her life got even better when she met Ricky Paniagua on Tinder. By September, they were madly in love with each other. Kendra lived in a fancy part of Dallas. Her address was Gables Park 17, which is near the intersection of Cedar Springs and Icard. The place always made her feel safe because there were a lot of security cameras and a butler service that worked all the time. Residents could even park safely in a parking area that was closely watched. Ricky was also doing well at work. He was finishing his dermatology training at the University of Texas. He and Kendra had even talked about getting married, even though they had only been dating for 4 months. Now, this may seem too early, but they found that they were a great match because they had the same standards and values. They thought they were pretty much the perfect couple. Someone said that Kendra was lovely, kind, and always ready to help someone in need. She put her whole heart and soul into both her work and her relationship with Ricky. She had worked hard to make her life what it was. But, as is so often the case, someone else's happiness and success can cause them a lot of trouble. It's not fun to be jealous. This envy unfortunately led to a terrible crime that would change Ricky's life forever and cause Kendra to lose hers. The 2nd of September, Kendra finished her job at Smile Zone and went home to Gables Park 17. It was Friday, and she was excited for the weekend because she and Ricky were going to Mexico for Labor Day, which is a holiday in the U.S. When they got back, she was really looking forward to talking about plans for her and Ricky to move to San Francisco. But she had no idea what would happen when she got to her building at exactly 7:42 p.m. When she got home, she drove her car into the safe garage and parked it where she always does. But just minutes later, 2 people in the garage heard a woman yelling, and then they heard the terrifying sound of a gun going off. Hashem Saad, another person who lived in the building, heard the same sounds and knew right away that something was wrong. Even though he didn't know exactly what happened or who was involved, he called 911 and told them what he had heard. But before he did that, people saw a Jeep Cherokee speeding out of the parking garage. They weren't sure if it had anything to do with the sounds they had heard or if someone was just in a hurry. The cops got there quickly, but when they got there, nothing they did could have changed what they saw. Unfortunately, Kendra was already dead when the police finally got to the scene of the crime. Up until this point, there was no sign that anyone was mean to Kendra. Who could? After all, She was pretty much the best person any of us could hope to be. The police quickly noticed that her bag was missing when they started to look around the crime scene. Because her purse wasn't in her car or anywhere in the garage, it was quickly thought that she had been robbed and that something went wrong during the crime, leading to her thief killing her. For proof, a handgun magazine and pieces of its ammunition were found close to where she was found. When the police looked into the scene more, though, they found some very shocking signs. As more and more proof came in, they came to the conclusion that this crime was planned. The fact that GSR residue was found on Kendra's hands showed that she had her hands behind her head when she was shot at, showed that they thought the scene was set up to look like a robbery. The path the bullet took also showed that the person who shot her was standing behind her when they did it, while she was on her knees, most likely because they forced her to. This doesn't usually happen during a robbery. The police didn't know who would put this harmless woman through such horrible pain. It wasn't fair, but for the attacker, everything was going as planned. Once they were done cleaning up the crime scene, police had to tell Kendra's boyfriend Ricky the bad news. Ricky was obviously very upset when he heard the news. Later that night, he sent a text message to Brenda Delgado, his ex-girlfriend and longtime friend. Brenda was shocked to hear that Kendra had died. She promised Ricky that she would be there for him at any time, day or night. As the investigation into this strange crime went on, police looked at security video from Kendra's building and found a lot of information about the Jeep Cherokee that was seen leaving the garage right after the shots were fired. It showed that the car got to the building at 7:15 p.m., which was 28 minutes before Kendra drove into the garage. A man could be seen walking towards where Kendra's car was parked on video footage taken inside the garage. He was then seen going back to the Jeep not long after. That man was definitely guilty of the crime, but the police didn't recognize him or the Jeep he was seen in. It was then discovered that the man wasn't acting alone. A woman was seen driving the Jeep just seconds after the man got back in. It was clear that this whole thing was planned ahead of time. The scene footage wasn't clear enough to identify the two suspects or see the Jeep's number plate number. That's why police decided to share stills from the security footage with the public and ask anyone who recognized the couple or the car to come forward. Usually, these requests for information don't get answered because either no one can figure out who the suspects are or people are too afraid to come forward for fear of being hurt. But that wasn't the case for Kendra at all. As soon as this information came out, Jose Luis Ortiz shocked everyone by admitting that the Jeep in the video was his. He was adamant that he wasn't there when the crime happened and that he had no idea that his car would become the focus of a true crime investigation. Usually, investigators would not believe such claims, but Luis Ortiz had more information that would help guide the probe in the right direction. The details are both sad and angry. Surprisingly, when detectives talked to Joe, the first person she named was Brenda Delgado, Ricky's ex-girlfriend. Brenda's family said she was a good, loving person who stuck to her Christian views and morals and was part of a loving family. He told her that she and Crystal Cortez, who is 26 years old, had asked him to work on Cortez's car because the engine was broken in the morning of September 2nd. When they asked if they could use his Jeep for the day, he gladly agreed. He knew the two women had to go to work, so he thought it would be nice to help them out. After work, they planned to meet back at Jose's place, but later that day, these plans changed at the last minute. Brenda called him while he was waiting for the Jeep to be returned and asked if it would be okay for them to meet at a nearby Chili's instead. So he agreed, because it seemed like a good request. He was confused when he got there and saw that neither the car nor Crystal were there. In the evening, the two women would give him back his Jeep, but by this time, he knew that Kendra had been killed and that his car had been used in the crime. Before calling the police, Luis Ortiz talked to Brenda about the still pictures that were made public. She reassured him that the car that was caught on camera was not his own. It was just a chance that it looked exactly like his own. However, she later changed her story and said that Crystal had driven the Jeep to Kendra's building because she had to pick up illegal goods for a friend. Jose was obviously not happy about this. It occurred to her that something must have gone wrong and that Kendra had either been involved or had died while watching the event. When they found out who owned his Jeep, he knew he had to come forward because it could have led to bad things. Jose told the police that Brenda told him to keep quiet after he admitted what the Jeep had been used for because he could lose his U.S. citizenship if the police found that he was involved in the crime when he wasn't. She told him that he should get the Jeep resprayed in a different color so that his name wouldn't be linked to the investigation. She even offered to pay for this to be done. His suspicions were raised even more, though, because he could tell Brenda was lying. He knew he had to clear his name as soon as possible by telling the cops what he did, and he did just that. The police set out right away to find Brenda. She told them she had never heard of Kendra and had no idea who she was when she was finally questioned. She also said she had a good reason for not being there when Kendra was attacked. Investigators got receipts from Chili's from her, and she told them that Jose would prove that she was there at that exact time because they had dinner together. Brenda then told the cops that she was with Crystal when they got the Jeep from Jose and that she let Crystal use it for the rest of the day. This was to help them figure out who was really responsible. Then they talked to Crystal to get her side of the story. She had a great story to tell. She admitted that she was the driver seen on the parking garage's security video. But she also said that she had driven there against her will with her young son in the car because they had been robbed and an armed man had told her to go to Kendra's building. This was obviously a lie. Investigators were sure this wasn't true because they had watched the security video carefully and no one had seen a child in the car at any point. When they told her straight out that she was lying, Crystal quickly made up a different story, which is not a good idea when you're with experienced cops. She then said that she had agreed to drive the man to the building so that he could rob it, but her good friend Brenda had asked her to do it. She claimed, though, that she had no idea what had happened and that she had no idea that someone had died. At this point, Crystal admitted that she was an accomplice, but she wouldn't go down alone because she had now accused Brenda and said that Brenda was the one who asked her to take part in the theft. After that, she said that Brenda wanted the man to rob Kendra because she was angry that her ex-boyfriend Ricky was seeing someone else. The case was now making a lot more sense. It turned out that Brenda couldn't accept that Ricky and Kendra were dating when she found out about it. It looked like the police were onto something, but this is just the beginning. Even though Brenda still cared deeply about Ricky, she would never have told him. Instead, she found ways to keep an eye on him. And these activities are so creepy that they will give you chills. Ricky dated other women after breaking up with Brenda, but Brenda didn't know the relationship would last until she met Kendra. Ricky and Brenda stayed in touch in the months after they broke up, so he thought it was the right thing to do to email Brenda and let her know that he was now seeing someone seriously. Brenda made it seem like she was happy for him and even suggested that they stay friends. Ricky must have thought this was a very grown-up way to react, and he must have been glad she handled the news so well. But he didn't know that Brenda was actually broken up by the news. It seemed to have a very big effect on her because she and Crystal then started making plans to get Kendra out of the picture. Meanwhile, Brenda tried to keep as many details as possible from Crystal. Crystal quickly saw how much trouble they were in and chose to testify for the prosecution in the hopes of getting a lighter sentence for her part in the crime. She said that she and Brenda started making their bad plans just 2 weeks after meeting. Brenda told her that she wanted Kendra to leave Ricky's life, even if it meant killing her. This alone would have made most people not want to keep being friends, but Crystal was quickly on board, which I found strange. Early on, it was clear that Brenda was going crazy over Ricky and Kendra's relationship to the point where it was getting in the way of her daily life. She missed a few shifts at work because she was too busy keeping an eye on Ricky. This was especially true after she got into his email account and saw that they were planning to not only go on vacation, but also move away together to start a new life. We got a really good idea of how badly her mental health was getting worse when she told Crystal that she thought Kendra was a fake who had taken her place. The more time went by, the worse Brenda felt about Kendra. Eventually, she decided that the only way to get Ricky back was to get rid of Kendra. First, she went up to her cousin Moses Martinez and asked him to help her by hitting Kendra with a baseball bat. He politely declined, which was the right thing to do. She then talked to a friend, Jennifer Escobar, and told her about the same plan. She managed to convince herself that the attack would put Kendra in a coma, which would give her time to work on getting Ricky back. Jennifer also said no. Brenda had already hacked into Ricky's email account by this point, and she spent most of her time reading his messages and following him around. Jen knew Brenda had become obsessed with Ricky and was worried that she still had a copy of the house keys and could access his bank accounts, even though he didn't know about it. When Jennifer said she wouldn't go along with her plans, Brenda offered that instead of hitting Kendra with a baseball bat, she could give her a car, the drug that would kill her, and $2,000 for her trouble. Jennifer once more said no. That's when Brenda and Crystal met. Crystal admired her new friend because she had a stable job, her own place, and made good money. Crystal, on the other hand, was having a hard time making ends meet as a single mom who worked hard but didn't make much money. An ATM transfer slip that was later found among Brenda's things showed that she gave Crystal $500 to help her out when the two women started planning the attack. However, they needed to find someone who was ready to get their hands dirty. To do this, they began driving around Crystal's neighborhood, which had a bad image. This is where they would look for someone to do the job. Surprisingly, they approached several people, but each one turned them down. I think it's crazy that these two women just drove around a neighborhood pleading with people to take someone's life. I think that's crazy. But in the end, they met a man named Christopher Love, who was 31 years old. He seemed ready to commit the crime, and they even talked about different ways they could kill Kendra. In the end, they decided that a gun would be best because it would allow them to do the crime quickly. Christopher would be paid in cash and illegal drugs, and Brenda told him she could put him in touch with people in her gang, which he gladly agreed to. While reading Ricky's emails, Brenda learned that he and Kendra were planning to take a vacation to Mexico that weekend. She also learned that they were making plans to move away when they got back. Brenda then told everyone that the crime had to be done right away. Brenda and Crystal followed Kendra around to see what she did every day, while Christopher waited for Brenda to tell him what to do. While sitting across the street at a Salvation Army thrift shop, they found out where she worked and once used binoculars to watch her while she was in her office. That afternoon, they followed her as she drove home. They then figured out that they could get into the parking area by waiting outside and following a resident as they drove in. The gate opened just in time for this to work. They were sure that their plan would work once they knew Kendra's pattern after following her around for a few days. 3 friends practiced what they were going to do the next day, on September 1st, to make sure everyone knew what to do. Jose let Brenda and Crystal borrow his Jeep the next morning. After dropping Brenda off at the Carrollton Library, they picked up Christopher. After that, Christopher and Crystal went to the Smile Zone. Crystal did leave Christopher there at one time because she had to get her son and nephew from school. After that, she took them to her grandmother's house and then came back to finish the job. Then they saw Kendra leave work at the end of her shift, but they got lost in traffic and got to her building before she did. They were able to sneak into the parking basement and wait for her there. When she got there, Christopher got out of the Jeep and carried out the plan while Crystal stayed out of sight. After getting away, they drove to Christopher's house and dropped him off. Crystal then drove the Jeep back to Jose. Crystal told the cops about the whole plan as part of the deal she made with the prosecution. However, Crystal was given 35 years in prison instead of a life term for her help, which I don't think is much of an improvement. There's no doubt that she won't even serve half that time before getting out on parole, though. When Christopher found out he was caught because the gun used in the crime was in his car, he freely admitted that he had played a part in it and that Brenda had planned the whole thing. But even though he was ready to give detectives all the details of the crime, they no longer needed him. They already knew the whole plan because Crystal had made it. Christopher was then given the death penalty because he was the one who killed Kendra. Brenda, there was only one more piece left to put together. She set all of these things off because she wouldn't accept that Ricky was happy with his new partner. Brenda ran away when she realized she was in a lot of trouble rather than face the results of her horrible actions. She was on the run for 7 months and was put on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. There was a $100,000 prize for information that led to her capture, but she was found in Mexico in the end and arrested there in April of the next year. In the end, she would be sent back to the U.S. on the condition that she would not be put to death. She said she wasn't guilty of all the charges against her and insisted she had a different story about when the crime happened. It wasn't her. Without a doubt, the jurors thought Brenda was the one who planned the attack on Kendra. They found her guilty and gave her a sentence of life in prison without the chance of parole. There is no doubt that this horrible crime should never have happened, and because of one person's jealousy, Kendra's family's lives will never be the same. The loss of her has hurt even some of her coworkers a lot. Tammy Pitano, a close friend of Kendra's who went to school with her and stayed friends after they finished, said it's hard for her to be carefree and happy these days. You can't be sure what's around the next turn. She says she isn't as friendly as she used to be. This is probably because she is afraid and hurt. She also said that the crime had a bad effect on her husband and on a lot of other people, including patients who knew Kendra. Her patients are also having a hard time accepting the fact that 3 people who had never met her or talked to her had killed such a kind and lovely person. You never know what will happen when passion and jealousy take over someone's mind. Most people would finally come to terms with the fact that they need to move on with their lives, but Brenda Delgado wouldn't accept that she couldn't get what she wanted. She will pay for it for the rest of her life. But this exchange alone isn't enough to make up for the loss of Kendra Hatcher. She was a truly wonderful young woman. Thank you for watching this true crime case. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.